Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Great, 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 great. You know, we had a wonderful lunch, and typically after lunch, we have that, what do we call it? Um, we, we come down. And so I just want to energize you and let you know that we bring the energy so you don't have to worry about it. But in the meantime, in between time, we want to thank you for attending this wonderful session. We're grateful to Money 2.0 and Law 2.0. I think it's a wonderful and great mix when we start talking about risk management, managing risk against the unexpected. I do recall years ago when we came into the financial services business that at that point in time in the 90s, if you could not speak about getting 25% rate of return to 30% rate of return on investments, you lost the audience. But what we have learned is that there's all types of risks that are out here. And so we need to manage that risk, and we need to talk about it. And when we start planning, we need to write it down. It's something about writing the vision makes it plain. And so let's dig in. We don't have a whole lot of time, but let's talk about managing risks against the unexpected. What we want to try to do is sum up some of the experience I've had in the last 26 years in terms of risk management. And when I look in the room and some of the expertise that are here, if we added up all of the years of experience, we could really, really do something in this place. And so I'm just glad that we realize that when we all come together here, whether it's law and whether it's finance, that we can work together as iron sharpens iron. 3 critical points that we want to focus on today is living longer, dying too soon, and faced with a disability, what we call quality of life. So when you see QOL, that's what it is, quality of life. Because what good would it be to have quantity if we don't have quality? Living too long. I was having a discussion earlier, and we were talking about distribution rates. The pension board years ago said 5% should be the withdrawal rate from your pension plan. You should not go more than 5%. Otherwise, you risk the chance of having perpetuity to your plan. And so now that 5% is today's 4%. And what that means is for every $1 million that you have, that represents a distribution stream of $40,000. You can see up in the top corner a retirement plan rule of thumb that dictates retiree withdrawal of 4%, their retirement fund, their first year, and remove the dollar amount, adjusted for inflation. That's another critical mass, the adjustment for inflation. The Federal Reserve and the central banks have been targeting around 2 to 3% inflation. That's what they were targeted. But what we saw with COVID-19 and what we're seeing today, we're seeing inflationary rates as high as it's 7.2% now, but it was high as 8.5%. In addition, we didn't just see that here in the United States, we also saw that in the UK and Britain. Dying too soon. Dying too soon. This is recent, just this month. We had a Mississippi State head coach that passed away at age 61. You might remember his name, Michael Leach. Do you remember? Michael Leach. Stephen Twitch Boss. Do you remember that name? He was the DJ for Ellen DeGeneres on that show. He died at age 40, just this month. Just this month, And then also in June, we had Jalen Ferguson, the linebacker for the Baltimore Ravens, at age 26, dying too soon. And so we asked the question, if that was to happen, if we were to experience this, or his family, what type of economic impact did that have to their families? Now, we see here, Jalen was only in the NFL for about 4 years, 3 years going to 4 years. So if the planning was not done properly, or was not done, that family would have suffered. In addition, his wife and his children. So we're talking about leaving a legacy, if you will. And so dying too soon is also a concern on our roadmap. Faced with disability that impacts your quality of life. I want to share a story about a gentleman that I drove 250 miles to see after we installed his plan. He was a top-known surgeon in Michigan, and he was an ENT, traveled around the world, spoke, wrote articles for the American Medical Association, and we get there. I drove 250 miles. I just was in a driving good mood back then, 10, 15 years ago. And so I drive to his client. He comes out of surgery in his scrubs, and he says, I know I'm supposed to do this disability, but I don't know if I really want to do this. And so that was a point in time that was a reckoning to me, because I had to be just as confident as he was doing surgery in terms of what I do as an advisor. But when you look back in retrospect, you find out how important that is. Let us roll forward. A year, and you know that any type of insurance policies has a 2-year contestability, right? So in that 2 years, we got to a year and 10 months, 2 months before his contestability period ended. And guess what happened? He was having surgery on his back, and he just thought it was a pinched nerve. He had another surgery, and then the doctors told him, you have Lou Gehrig. Oh, what a game changer. We felt confident about the work that we did, but he had to go through the 2-year contestability. Once he went through the questioning, and imagine if you're a top surgeon around the world and people ask you questions, he said, they asked me questions as if I'm lying. I said, no, they're just doing their job. So we instruct the client, answer the questions truthfully, and we'll take care of the rest. Well, he answered the questions truthfully, and he was approved. Now, Lou Gehrig starts taking a bigger impact on his life. But what the good thing is, the very reason we drove 250 miles and we encouraged our client to do the right thing, he was now protected, his family was now protected. This thing got really big, bigger than what we thought. We put on bells and whistles on the disability so that if there's a permanent disability, loss of 2 hands, loss of 2 ears, hearing, loss of 2 eyes, he was considered totally disabled. And they paid, and we maxed him out at $15,000 a month. Because he was totally disabled, they doubled it to $30,000 a month. Then they gave him $500,000 to convert his house into a comfortable hospital stay. Round-the-clock doctors and nurses to take care of him. He was in great shape. Now, what's the financial and economic impact of that? The financial economic impact of that is that he didn't have to use his retirement dollars to take care of his health needs. These are the 5 critical areas that we identified. as foundational in terms of managing risk. We have the mortality tables. There's been a shift in the mortality tables since COVID-19. COVID-19 has taught us to appreciate life a lot more. COVID-19 has also taught us that that we can be impacted. Some of us may survive, but the very fact that we went through it says something that we're still here, but we don't know the overall impact of COVID-19 that's going to have down into the future. So we did get the vaccines. We did do the boosters. We do feel a lot better, but we really won't know the total impact of COVID-19 for probably another 10, 15 years. Inflation. Inflation is important because you want the purchasing power that you have today also in the future. And the purchasing power right now is being impacted because inflation right now is over double digits in terms of what the planning model was. The planning model was 2 to 3%, we're at 7.2. Healthcare costs, what we've been doing is trying to, we believe that healthcare costs is going to increase in the future. And so if healthcare costs is going to increase, part of our planning is to include that in the overall plan. And so we'll discuss that a little bit later in terms of how we can bridge that or hedge that increase in costs in healthcare by utilizing certain options that we have with vehicles that we already own. And then there is future increases in taxes. Oh my goodness. You can't get through the United States without paying taxes. So we talk about ways that you need to have 3 buckets of money. You have the money that you earn, called your wages, your salary. You pay taxes on that. That's taxable income. You have tax-deferred income, money that you put into your 401k, which you can max out at $20,800 a year. And then you need to have tax-free money. Tax-free money. And if you have tax-free money in the future, if taxes increase, you don't have to worry because you have tax-free. Right now, the IRA, stretch IRA has ended. That moment has ended. And so now the new buzzword is Roth IRA. And if you max out because you make too much money, over $200,000, you can't contribute to a Roth, then what you can do is do an IRA conversion. They call it a Roth conversion, which where you take your IRA and convert it to a Roth, pay the taxes then, and you pay the taxes now because you're expecting tax rates to be higher in the future. Lastly, you can utilize your life insurance because life insurance is the last vehicle left now that will allow you for tax-free distributions as well. This slide talks about the mortality rate that was a result of COVID-19. The bottom line, if you look at the bottom line to this, is that on the second to last line, 1.8-year drop in 2020. So life expectancy due to COVID has dropped almost 2 years. And what that means is when they start analyzing the impact of COVID-19, we see that 50% of that is related, 50% of the decline in life expectancy, 50% of that is related to COVID-19. We have other areas that were impacted. We listed that, but we wanted to highlight the COVID-19 impact. And we're not through with COVID-19. I just woke up this morning on the news flash, and there is some serious concerns in Texas pertaining to COVID-19 going on right now. And so we're not through. And so when we plan for the unexpected, we need to really take into account healthcare costs, increase in healthcare costs. That's where I'm driving here. I could hit taxes. There's a whole lot of other areas, but I'm sticking with the increase in healthcare costs. One of the other areas is U.S. debt. Currently, our U.S. debt is at $32 trillion. Every 4 seconds, it goes up by 105,000. And so when we start looking at some of these indicators, the imbalancement between imports and exports, more goods coming in than going out. When we start looking at, there's going to be some serious concern dealing with Social Security in the future. When we start looking at inflationary rates out of control, these are indicators, if you will, that we may be looking at a tax increase that we need to be planning for. And so when we're talking about managing against the unexpected, managing risk against the unexpected, taxes play a big part of it. I love this slide because it talks about planning. You see at the top on the left, you have planning. There's always going to be some type of disaster. And then there's damage control. However, the slide shows us that if we flip that over, completely over, and put more time toward planning, we'll have less time that we'll have to worry about damage control. What's the impact of damage control? The less damage control you have, the better. The less damage control you have less stress. The less damage control time that you have, you can live longer. The less damage control that you have, it'll cost you less. So we want to focus on adding or increasing our planning model more so that we don't have to worry about damage control. This is real talk. These are statistics, okay? It talks about the chronic condition. That's when we call it long-term care. All right, it says 80% of older adults have one chronic condition. 70% have two. Every 40 seconds, there's a heart attack. There's a stroke. And so these are things we don't plan for. These are health concerns that we don't plan for. The cost at retirement from age 65, the actual cost for healthcare is expected to be close to $285,000, $300,000. And so that is the incremental amount for healthcare costs. And then 60% of Americans are saying they're concerned about the increase in healthcare costs. And what does that mean? As advisors, that means we have work to do. We need to be helping them solving that problem. When we talk about critical, chronic, and terminal illness, and this is on the healthcare side, these are some of the items that we're talking about. If you have a major heart attack, coronary bypass, stroke, invasive cancer, blood cancers, organ transplants, end-stage renal failure, paralysis, coma, these type indicators, these are critical illnesses. And so this is all, when we're doing the overall planning, we talk about critical, chronic, and terminal illness and what we would do in the event that happens. Chronic illness is when you can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living. We call those ADLs. Bathing, dressing, toileting, transferring, continence, eating. If you can't do 2 of these 6 items, you qualify for chronic illness. But I submit to you, we need to have a plan. Everyone's not going to have a long-term care policy. Everyone's not going to have a critical illness policy. But there are vehicles that you can have where you can take care of that and not cost you additional dollars. We'll talk about that. Lastly, we have the chronic illness, terminal illness. This is when you have an illness that will expected to take you out in the next 24 months. Critical, chronic, and terminal illness. So the important questions we have to ask ourselves, because in the insurance and financial services area, a lot of times people find out that they're not well when they either apply for life insurance, apply for some form of insurance, or when they go to the doctor for an annual physical and then they get rerouted somewhere else. And so what we want to do is to plan for these type things as part of our overall planning when we're sitting down. And then we have to ask the question, because sometimes we need to make sure it's real. If you did get a critical, chronic, or terminal illness, how would you feel? What would you do? What would your family feel? What would your family do? And so sometimes we have to ask these questions because it's real. When that ENT doctor, and I'm telling you, he was confident than I can tell you. He did pass away. He succumbed to from Lou Gehrig's. But I can tell you, when he walked out of the surgery room, he felt confident as if when he walked into the surgery room. But when he was faced with Lou Gehrig's, it was a game changer. But what helped lighten the load was that was part of his plan. He had already placed it into action. So the last question you would ask, where are the funds going to come from to take care of a critical, chronic, or terminal illness? If you had a heart attack, stroke, or cancer, or if you can't do 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, or if you go in and your primary care physician sends you to an oncologist, where are those funds going to come from? That's where, if you don't have such policy, you can utilize your life insurance policy, because the new wave of life insurance now is making sure that you're your own beneficiary. It allows you to be your own beneficiary. It allows you to take tax-free distributions for critical, chronic, and terminal illness paid to the insured. And so you don't have to use your retirement dollars to take care of health needs. Now, managing against the unexpected so that you don't have to use, there's also health-related, educational costs, estate planning. These dollars you have already earmarked for the family. And so the type of work, that's why that case really, I really think about it, because if I had said, okay, I'm going back, I done got all these other assets that you done given us to manage and do this, and you just didn't want this one, then what an impact that would have had to his family. He would have been using retirement dollars to take care of health needs. And so we're grateful for the opportunity. When you're looking at this, look at your life insurance. See how your life insurance can make you a beneficiary. You know, we had clients who used to say, oh, that benefits everyone when I pass away, but I get no benefit. Well, you can draw some money out. Yeah, I can, but I want something that I can benefit. So it looks like the industry heard the cries of the people and opened up an opportunity for you to utilize your life insurance far much more than what it was before. With that, I want to say thank you. We got a few minutes. If you have any questions at all, we will entertain them at this time. Any questions? Okay. The question was the maximum age that you can obtain disability coverage. The maximum age right now, I think it goes all the way up to age 70, and then it probably goes annually thereafter. So 70, and we may be able to stretch like 75. And typically what's going on is they're still working, they're still employed, they're still making money, and so we're trying to leverage the dollars that they're making to replace that, God forbid, if something happened to them, to bring that back into the fold. And we utilize group, we'll do group, we'll max out on group, we'll do short term, and then we'll do long term. This type plan that we did here was long term. Great question, thank you. Any other questions for me? All right. With that being said, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to also give kudos to my mentor. A lot of us stand on the shoulders of great people that have gone before us, and so we're grateful for Hicks Global Institute and Hicks Global Enterprises that entertains in 52 countries around the world. Thank you so much and have a great day.